You're listening to Papilio Effect. I'm your host, Jody. Welcome back to another episode where we explore the ideas that shape the way we see ourselves and the world around us. Today we're talking about a subject that often sparks debate before people have even agreed on what the words actually mean: gender as a social construct. Let's begin with something simple. Men and women are biologically different. Our chromosomes, hormones, reproductive systems, and average physical characteristics are different. Men generally produce more testosterone, while women produce more estrogen and progesterone. These biological differences are real. But biology is only part of the story. The question isn't whether biological sex exists. It clearly does. The question is, how much of what we think it means to be a man or a woman comes from biology, and how much comes from society? History gives us some fascinating clues. Take clothing. Today, dresses are often associated with women and trousers with men. But that hasn't always been the case. Ancient Romans wore tunics. Greek philosophers wore robes. Scottish men proudly wore kilts. Across the Middle East, men have traditionally worn long flowing garments. The clothes didn't change. Society's interpretation did. The same is true for colors. Today, pink is widely seen as feminine and blue as masculine. Yet in the early 20th century, some clothing catalogs recommended pink for boys because it was considered a stronger version of red. Blue, associated with calmness and the Virgin Mary, was often suggested for girls. Nothing in biology changed. Only culture did. Hair is another example. Long hair on men is sometimes seen as unusual today. Yet Vikings, samurai, many Native American peoples, and even biblical figures like Samson all wore long hair. In many cultures it represented strength, honor, or wisdom. Again, biology stayed the same. Society changed. Language also shapes the way we think. English separates a he and a she. French goes even further, giving almost every noun a grammatical gender. But Turkish is different. The word eoğur means he, she, and even it. Finnish and Hungarian work in similar ways. Millions of people have spoken these languages for centuries without needing separate pronouns for men and women. It makes you wonder whether some distinctions we see as universal are actually cultural choices. Jobs tell the same story. Nursing has often been viewed as women's work, yet many nurses today are men. Cooking at home has traditionally been associated with women, while many of the world's most famous professional chefs have been men. The work itself never changed. Only society's expectations did. Parenting changes across cultures too. Some societies expect fathers to be distant providers. Others expect them to be deeply involved in raising children from birth. The same biological father can be expected to behave very differently depending on where he lives. Even emotions are shaped by culture. Many boys grow up hearing, boys don't cry." Yet history is full of respected men openly expressing emotion. Achilles cried in the Iliad. King David mourned publicly. For many cultures, tears were seen as signs of sincerity rather than weakness. This is where people often misunderstand the phrase "a gender is a social construct." It doesn't mean biology isn't real. A social construct isn't imaginary. Money is a social construct. National borders are social constructs. Weekends, traffic rules, and many traditions are social constructs. They're real because people collectively created and accepted them. Gender roles work in a similar way. Different societies build different expectations around the same biological differences. That doesn't mean every difference between men and women comes from society. Biology matters. Hormones matter. Evolution matters. But culture matters too. We're shaped by both nature and nurture. Perhaps the most interesting question isn't whether gender has social elements. History strongly suggests that it does. The better question is this: which expectations genuinely help people flourish? And which ones exist simply because we've inherited them? Should a toy define someone? A color? A hairstyle? A profession? Or a piece of clothing? History reminds us that many things we call normal today would have seemed strange to people living centuries ago. Culture changes. And maybe that's the biggest lesson of all. So the next time someone says, "That's just the way men are," or "that's just the way women are," ask yourself, is that biology speaking? Or is that society? Sometimes it's one. Sometimes it's the other. And very often, it's a little bit of both. Thank you for listening to Papilio Effect. If this episode made you question something you once took for granted, consider sharing it with someone who enjoys thoughtful conversations. Until next time, stay curious.